Hey, this is Mindsprout, and today, let's explore yet another seminal writer, John Webster.
So, when you think about theater from that whole Jacobean era, one name just pops into your head, right? Shakespeare. But here's the thing we gotta remember. He wasn't some lone genius writing in an empty room. Oh no. The stage was absolutely packed with other incredible, game-changing writers. It was a whole universe of talent, all working at the same time. And this leads to a question a lot of us have. You know the feeling, right? You've binged all of Shakespeare. The histories, the comedies, the big tragedies, and you're just left thinking, okay, what's next? I want more from this era. Well, if that's you, there's a path that a lot of people take, and it leads straight to a guy who was, in a lot of ways, Shakespeare's darker, more thrilling, and, let's say, obsessive rival. And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is a super common journey for readers. Like this one Redditor, Chopin Mazurka, said that after they'd read all the Shakespeare they could find, they decided to branch out to Webster. It just makes sense, you know? It's the natural next step if you really want to dive into the deeper, shadowier corners of that whole scene. So that brings us to a really fun comparison. Let's put these two geniuses right next to each other. Now, the goal here isn't to say who's better. That's not the point. What we really want to do is figure out what made each of them so unique, and maybe more importantly, why one guy became a global superstar and the other, well, he's more of an acquired taste for a very specific crowd. Okay, so when you first read Webster, the reaction is usually just, wow. You're completely dazzled. People get hit by his language right away. It's so rich, so creative, and just beautifully poetic. Honestly, it's so powerful that you can't help but ask, wait a minute, why isn't this guy just as famous as Shakespeare? But then you start to see another side to it. Another reader made a great point. That same dazzling style can sometimes feel a little labored, you know? Where Shakespeare's writing just flows, it feels effortless, Webster's can feel like it was built brick by painful brick. And that really gets to a core difference. Maybe it's natural-born genius versus just sheer relentless effort. And that really is the crucial difference, isn't it? Shakespeare is seen as this universal genius. He covers the whole spectrum of human life. But Webster, he was a specialist. His style is super intense, laser-focused. It's less of a sweeping epic and more like an edge-of-your-seat thriller that's just obsessed with a few very, very dark ideas. Which brings us right to the heart of what makes Webster, well, Webster. If you really want to get him, you have to be willing to step into his world. And it is a world of incredible darkness, where how fragile and corrupt life is, that's always the main event. You know, the famous poet T.S. Eliot absolutely nailed it. He said Webster was much possessed by death. And for Webster, this wasn't just some morbid phase. It was a total obsession. He wasn't just writing about death. He saw the skull beneath the skin, the unavoidable truth hiding just under the surface of literally everything. Critics often call his world a deep pit of darkness, and that's not an exaggeration. His plays just hammer away, relentlessly, on our capacity for cruelty, on the way our bodies decay, on how vicious and corrupt our social systems are. I mean, it is a deeply, profoundly pessimistic view of everything. But here's the kicker. He wasn't just about being gloomy for the sake of it. No way. Webster was a true innovator. He took one of the most popular genres of his day and just twisted all the rules, completely changing our idea of what a tragedy could even do. So he was playing in the sandbox of the revenge tragedy. You can basically think of this as the action blockbuster of its time, made popular by guys like Thomas Kidd. And audiences, they ate it up. They loved the formula. You've got a secret murder, a ghost who shows up demanding revenge, someone pretending to be crazy to get answers, and then, of course, a huge bloody finale where the stage is just littered with bodies. But Webster took that formula and hit the remix button. First off, he completely flips who you're rooting for. Normally, you're on the side of the Avenger, right? In Webster's plays, your heart goes out to the victim. Second, he brings in a real moral compass. The bad guys don't just get killed, they get what's coming to them, a truly fitting end. And finally, he took all that blood and guts and somehow turned it into something profound, making the horror just deeply, heartbreakingly sad. So, what exactly was he creating then? Well, much later, the critic Walter Benjamin came up with a term that fits Webster's work perfectly, the Trauerspiel, which translates to mourning play. Think of it as a kind of tragedy that's not based on ancient myths, but on history. It's all about the suffering of a good person, a martyr, at the hands of a tyrant in a world where there's just no hope of redemption. It's really a tragedy about how to endure life in a broken world. So when all is said and done, what is Webster's legacy? I mean, he is so much more than just Shakespeare's dark rival. He built a completely unique universe on the stage, a vision so powerful and so disturbing that it's been influencing writers for hundreds of years. You really can't just slap a simple label on his plays. Are they tragedies? Yes, but they're also gripping psychological thrillers. Are they poems? Absolutely. They're beautiful lyrical poems that just happen to be built out of the stuff of nightmares. And when you take all of those ingredients, that incredible language, that deep, dark worldview, all those clever innovations to the tragedy formula, and that focus on a suffering martyr, they all come together in what is widely considered his absolute masterpiece. We'll look at his famous works, the first being Duchess of Malfi.
All right, let's now look at the Duchess of Malfi. This play, first hitting the stage way back around 1623, is one of the all-time great Jacobean revenge tragedies. And let me tell you, it is a wild ride. We're talking about a story that's dark, super complex, and honestly pretty grotesque at times. It really gets into the weeds on corruption, power, and what it means to defy the world.
So what's at the heart of this whole thing? It really boils down to this one question. On the one hand, you've got the Duchess, a sovereign ruler with real political power. But all the chaos, all the tragedy, it gets kicked off because she wants something deeply personal, the freedom to marry the person she loves. And that puts her on a collision course with a world run by men, specifically her brothers, who think they own her, body and soul.
And this is where it all ignites. See, the Duchess is a young widow, and her two incredibly powerful brothers, Ferdinand and the Cardinal, have laid down the law. She is absolutely forbidden from remarrying. Now why? Well, it's this toxic cocktail of greed, of pride, of keeping the bloodline pure, and maybe something a whole lot darker and more twisted. But the Duchess? She's not having it. She decides to defy them.
Right from the jump, the playwright John Webster doesn't mess around. He basically paints the whole moral world of the play in black and white. You've got the Duchess, who is constantly surrounded by images of light. She's all about purity, virtue, just basic goodness. And then you have her brothers. They're all about the shadows, about darkness. They represent the absolute worst of this world, the corruption, the lies, the decay. It's literally a battle of light versus dark.
And what she does next is, well, it's just an incredible act of courage. She completely takes matters into her own hands. Not only does she marry in secret, but she proposes to him, to her steward, Antonio. In their world, this is a massive scandal on two fronts. First, she's directly defying her brother's command, and second, she's smashing the class barrier to pieces by marrying someone considered so far beneath her. It's a total rejection of their rules. She picks love over everything else.
But, you know, a secret like that can't stay buried forever. It just can't. Especially when your creepy brothers have already planted a spy right inside your own house. This is where the walls really start to close in.
And you know, they actually pull it off for a few years. They have 3 kids together, all in secret. But the whole time, this spy, Basola, is watching their every move. And there's this brilliant little scene with apricots. He gives her some, knowing they were thought to induce labor back then, and bam, her reaction gives everything away. It's such a tiny domestic moment, but it has these massive, fatal consequences. You just know the clock is ticking.
And then, the secret is out, and it happens in one of the most chilling scenes you can imagine. Ferdinand finds out about the kids, though not yet who the father is, and he sneaks into his sister's bedroom in the dead of night. He doesn't just shout, he hands her a dagger and tells her to kill herself for dishonoring the family. The rage is just off the charts, and it's got this deeply unsettling, obsessive vibe to it. It's truly terrifying.
You'd think it couldn't get worse than that, but oh, you'd be wrong. So wrong. After that confrontation, the brothers' revenge goes from just threats to this systematic campaign of psychological torture. This isn't just about punishment anymore. This is about putting on a show.
To really get what they're doing, it helps to know this concept from the philosopher Michel Foucault. He talked about the spectacle of the scaffold. The idea is that public tortures and executions weren't really about justice.
They were theater. They were designed to be a terrifying performance of the ruler's absolute power over a person's body. And that's exactly what Ferdinand and the Cardinal are doing here. They're staging a private horror show to prove they have total control over the Duchess.
And the things they do, it is just pure gothic horror. They lock her away and show her these freakishly realistic wax figures of her husband and kids pretending they're all dead. In the dark, Ferdinand gives her what he claims is a severed hand from her husband. They even have a group of madmen howl and scream outside her room day and night. Every single thing they do is calculated to just shatter her spirit.
But here's the thing. This is the moment where everything pivots. They throw all of this unbelievable cruelty at her, everything designed to completely erase who she is, and she doesn't break. Instead, she finds this incredible, unshakable dignity. And then she says it, one of the most famous lines in all of English drama. As her executioners stand before her, trying to humiliate her one last time, she just kneels down with this incredible calm and asserts herself. It's like she's saying, "You can kill me, but you can't touch who I am." In a world that's trying to reduce her to nothing, it's this powerful, final act of defiance.
And just to show us how extraordinary the Duchess's composure is, Webster immediately shows us, her waiting woman, Cariola, is dragged in next, and she completely panics. She fights, she bites, she begs for her life. Her reaction is messy and terrified and completely recognizably human. It really drives home that the Duchess's calm isn't just normal, it's a kind of superhuman aristocratic heroism. Cariola's reaction is probably how most of us would go down.
And here's the kicker. Even Ferdinand, the monster behind all this, is completely broken by what he's done. He looks at his sister's body and he just can't take it. He says, "Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle." That image of light comes roaring back. He tried to snuff out her light, her goodness, and now, even in death, it's so brilliant it's blinding him with guilt.
So, the hero is dead. You'd think the play is over, right? Nope, not even close. The whole final act is basically what happens when you take the moral compass out of the world. It just descends into a chaotic, bloody free-for-all, where the villains, drowning in their own evil, just turn on each other.
Ferdinand's guilt literally drives him insane. He develops something called lycanthropy, which means he actually believes he's a wolf. He starts howling, digging up graves. He becomes the predatory animal on the outside that he always was on the inside. His humanity is just gone.
And the ending isn't some grand, noble duel. It's a total mess. It's almost darkly funny how chaotic it is. Bassola, the spy, decides he wants revenge, but in the dark he accidentally kills Antonio, the one good person left. Then he goes after the cardinal, and a completely mad Ferdinand just leaps into the fight, stabbing his brother and Bassola. Then Bassola stabs Ferdinand back. In the end, they all just kill each other. It's not justice, it's just a pile of bodies.
So, after all of that, all the blood, the torture, the scheming, what was it all for? What's the point? That's what the play asks us as the dust settles.
And it's Bassola, the guy caught in the middle of everything, who sums it all up as he's dying. He looks at all the ambition and power-grabbing, and he basically says it all amounts to a kind of nothing. All their grand plans, all their cruelty, it all just shrinks down into this tiny, meaningless point. It was all for nothing.
And that's what's so powerful and frankly so unsettling about the Duchess of Malfi. There's no happy ending. There's no sense that justice has been served. The good guys are dead, the bad guys are dead, and the stage is just littered with corpses. We're left in this total moral vacuum, looking at what one character calls a great ruin. It's just bleak.
Which leaves us with one last big question. Think about it. The Duchess loses everything. Her husband, her children, her own life. By any normal measure, she lost. But in a world that is so completely and totally corrupt, maybe her refusal to be broken, her defiant cry of "I am Duchess of Malfi still," maybe that's the only real victory you can have, even if it costs you everything. Next, we will look at the White Devil.
All right, today we are diving headfirst into the dark, bloody, and totally captivating world of Renaissance revenge tragedy. We're talking about a stage filled with wronged heroes, corrupt leaders, and some of the most spectacular acts of vengeance you can imagine.
So, where do we even begin to understand this stuff? Well, this quote from the philosopher Francis Bacon, it pretty much nails it. Revenge is a kind of wild justice. Think about that. It is a form of justice, but it's wild, it's raw, It's outside the rules. It feels right on a primal level, right? But Bacon also warns that it putteth the law out of office. It basically throws the official rulebook out the window.
And that's the core question that sparks every single one of these plays. What do you do when the very system that's supposed to give you justice is run by the bad guy? When the courts won't listen and the person who wronged you is untouchable? That's the impossible corner our hero, the Revenger, gets backed into.
And yeah, that feeling of being completely powerless, that's exactly where the story kicks off. Our Revenger isn't born a killer. They're made into one, because the world has left them with absolutely no other choice.
I mean, just picture it. Your father is murdered, your sister is assaulted, your rightful throne is snatched away. But the guy who did it, he's a powerful duke, or maybe even the king himself. He is literally above the law, so any attempt to get justice through the proper channels gets shut down, ignored, or even punished. The hero is left alone, grieving, and totally helpless.
So what can one powerless person possibly do against an entire corrupt system? They can't exactly sue them or call the police. They have to get creative. They have to turn the whole world into their own personal theater.
And this, right here, is the absolute genius of the genre. The Revenger decides, okay, if the world's a stage, then I'm going to be the secret director. They stop being the victim and start pulling the strings. They put on disguises, they set up these intricate traps, and they manipulate everyone around them, turning the villain's own court into the grand stage for their final, bloody performance.
You can actually break their whole journey down into a kind of playbook. Step 1, an unthinkable crime happens. Step 2, all the official routes for justice are blocked by someone powerful. Step 3, the hero has to ditch their old self and take on a new identity. Maybe they pretend to be crazy or wear a disguise. And finally, step 4, they stage their own brand of justice, which is usually public, spectacular, and incredibly violent.
Now, there's actually a cool name for this trick. It's called meta-theater. It's when a play gets self-aware and points out that it's a play. The most famous example, of course, is in Hamlet. Hamlet doesn't just accuse his uncle. No, he puts on a play, The Mousetrap, that reenacts the murder, basically forcing the king to expose his own guilt in front of everybody. He uses theater itself as a weapon to reveal the truth.
But here's the catch. Taking this path of deception and violence, well, it comes at a huge psychological price. In the quest to destroy a monster, you risk becoming one yourself. At the start of the play, the lines are drawn so clearly, right? It's black and white. You've got the noble hero, a victim who just wants justice. And on the other side, you have the corrupt villain, an abuser of power. Classic good versus evil.
But to get his revenge, our hero has to enter what's called a liminal state. It's this weird, blurry, in-between zone. They're not who they used to be, but they're not who they're going to become yet either. Is Hamlet really crazy, or is it all an act? Is Vintage a moral avenger, or just a cold-blooded killer? The lines between who you are, what's sane, and what's just a performance, they all just dissolve.
And by the end of the play, just look at this comparison again. The hero, in order to fight corruption, has become deceitful. To punish violence, he's become violent himself. And that is the great, dark irony of these stories. In the process of taking down his enemy, the Revenger becomes a mirror image of him. It makes us ask, does an eye for an eye really work, or does it just leave everyone blind?
So these plays are obsessed with a man taking back his power and agency. But what about the women in these stories? This is where the genre has a massive blind spot.
And the source material is really clear on this. While the male Revenger gets to be the director of his own fate, this newfound power was, well, a men's-only club. The women in these plays, they're almost never given that same chance.
This quote from the dissertation just says it all. Women are turned into spectacles. Their suffering, like the horrible violation of Lavinia in Titus Andronicus, is put on display to give the men a reason to get violent. And if a woman actually tries to get revenge herself, she's often painted as a monster, as unnatural, as somehow less of a woman for it.
So their job in the story is often passive. Their bodies literally become the stage where men fight out their conflicts. Their pain, like Ophelia's heartbreaking madness in Hamlet, isn't even their own to define. It's explained and interpreted for them by the men at court. They're symbols, not authors of their own destiny.
Okay, so all of this is building towards that one inevitable moment, the bloody finale, where the Venger's masterpiece of a plan finally goes off and we see the real consequences of this wild justice.
And sure enough, the villain is killed, usually in some incredibly dramatic, poetic fashion. Justice is done. But there's no happy ending. By taking the law into his own hands, the Revenger has become a loose cannon, a threat to the social order. So, almost every time, as soon as the main villain is dead, the Revenger is killed or exiled too. The state takes back control by wiping the board clean of anyone who dared to operate outside its rules.
What's really fascinating, though, is that the genre itself didn't stand still. The early plays, in what's called the Jacobean tradition, were really psychological. They were all about the Revenger's internal suffering. But as time went on, in the Jacobean era, the focus shifted outward. The plays became less about one person's broken mind and more about a broken society, a world so corrupt that it just naturally creates these tragedies.
And finally, let's look at an absolute masterpiece of this later style, John Webster's The White Devil. This play just flips the whole formula on its head. Get this, our sympathy actually starts to lean towards the villains, the adulterous lovers, because they're so witty and full of life. The so-called Revengers, on the other hand, come off as cruel and hypocritical. Webster isn't exploring a hero's journey here, he's using the revenge plot to put the whole rotten, corrupt court system on trial.
And that leaves us with the one question that has echoed for over 400 years and makes these plays feel so modern. When we fight monsters, how do we avoid becoming them? It's the central, chilling paradox of the revenge tragedy, and it's a question that's just as powerful today as it was on that bloody Renaissance stage.